It was just a normal Tuesday night. My parents were out to dinner with some friends from work and wouldn't be back until late. I'm 14, and my parents finally felt like I was old enough to stay home alone for a few hours. I was pretty excited about it, actually. I ordered a pizza, played some video games, and watched a movie. Just normal kid stuff. Around 9, I heard a knock at the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I looked through the peephole. There was a man standing there wearing a black ski mask and holding a huge hunting knife. I totally freaked out. Who was this guy? What did he want from me? My heart was racing as I ran upstairs to my bedroom and locked the door. I pushed my dresser in front of it, just like I had seen people do in movies. Then I heard the man banging on the front door demanding I open it. I don't know how he got in because a minute later, I heard him walk inside down on the first floor. I was totally terrified. I didn't know what to do. I picked up my cell phone to call the police, but there was no signal. So I tried the landline in my room, but that wasn't working either. I was trapped alone in my room with no way to call for help. Then I heard the man coming up the stairs. He was saying creepy things like, "I'm not going to hurt you," and come out wherever you are." He sounded like a total psycho. As he got to the top of the stairs, I heard him jiggle the doorknob to my bedroom. Thankfully, I had locked it and barricaded it shut. But then I heard him go into the next room. Oh no. I realized he could get to my bedroom through the adjoining bathroom. I ran to lock the bathroom door just as he entered the other room. Luckily, I made it in time. "Open this door," he yelled, while banging loudly. My whole body shook with fear. I was panicking and my mind raced to figure out what to do. I scanned the room looking for another way out. Then I saw my bedroom window. My house is 2 stories high, but I could probably climb down the roof to the ground. I knew I had to risk it because that was my only escape option. I threw open the window as fast as I could, but it got stuck halfway. I squeezed through the opening feet first and lowered myself onto the roof. The man must have heard me open the window because he came bursting through the bathroom door just as I dropped onto the roof. I clung tightly to the edge of the roof, not daring to look down. I could hear the man yelling from my bedroom window above. I scooted sideways towards the large tree next to the house. My plan was to climb down the tree branches to the ground. Just as I grabbed the closest branch, I heard a loud crack above me. I glanced up and saw the man leaning out my bedroom window with a crazy look in his eyes. I swung my body over to the tree trunk, hugging it tightly. The man ducked back inside, probably to come after me from the first floor. I knew I had to climb down fast. My hands shook as I lowered myself from branch to branch. But before I made it halfway down, I heard the man directly below me. He had run outside and stood at the base of the tree, staring up at me holding his knife. I was trapped. "Get down here now," he shouted. I was so terrified I almost fell out of the tree. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck up in the tree with him waiting below. Just then a car's headlights shone into our driveway. Someone was here. The man glanced back nervously, then turned and ran to his car parked in front of our house. I recognized the neighbor's voice shouting at the man. Within seconds, the screeching tires of the man's car peeled out down the street just as the neighbor reached the tree. He yelled up to ask if I was okay. I just nodded, too much in shock to speak. The neighbor said he had seen a strange car parked in front of my house and wanted to check things out. His timing couldn't have been more perfect. The police arrived shortly after and searched the house from top to bottom but found no trace of the man. I told them everything: the ski mask, the knife, breaking into my room. It was the most terrifying night of my life. I still have no idea who that man was or what he intended to do to me. But I'll never forget his creepy voice coming from inside my closet saying, come out wherever you are." It haunts me every night when I try to sleep. So that's the story of the night I was home alone and almost didn't live to tell about it. My parents got me a cell phone now that works even without a signal. And we moved to a new house the next month. I always lock the doors and sleep with a bat beside my bed. I don't think I'll ever feel truly safe at home alone after what happened that night. Wherever that man is, I hope the police find him before he tries to hurt some other unsuspecting kid home alone. It was the scream of my doorbell that jolted me awake that first night. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I glanced at the clock, 3:17 a.m. Who would be at my door at this hour? I lived alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood and never had unexpected late-night visitors. The doorbell screeched again into the silence, then again and again, more insistent now. Heart pounding, I grabbed my cell phone to check the doorbell camera app. Since installing the new high-tech camera last week, I like to check the live footage whenever the bell rang to see who was there. As the app loaded, the ringing stopped. Then the live feed appeared. At first, I saw nothing amiss on my front stoop, but just as I was about to set down the phone, a figure stepped into view of the camera. I froze. There on my doorstep was a person wearing dark clothing, a hood pulled down over their face. I couldn't make out any distinct features in the shadowy lighting. They were just standing there motionless, staring directly into the camera. A chill went down my spine. I waited for them to move or ring the bell again, but they continued standing there eerily still. Finally, after what felt like forever, they stepped backward and out of the camera's line of sight, disappearing into the night. I sat perplexed, heart still racing from being startled awake. Who was that? What did they want at this hour? Part of me wondered if it was just a drunk neighbor mistaking my house for their own. But at the back of my mind lingered a creeping unease. Eventually, I fell back asleep, but the next night I was jolted awake again by the shriek of the doorbell. I grabbed my phone, now on high alert. Sure enough, the camera showed the same shadowy figure had returned, standing motionless on my doorstep. I watched them stare menacingly into the camera again for several minutes, before backing away and vanishing once more. Over the next week, this pattern continued each night. The sudden ringing of the bell waking me from sleep, followed by footage of this unmoving midnight visitor. I became increasingly paranoid, setting alarms to go off every hour so I could check the live feed. I started noticing the figure would sometimes appear more than once a night, often standing closer to the camera and for longer periods. One night they remained there motionless for over an hour. Soon I was barely sleeping, dark circles forming under my eyes. I knew I should call the police, but what exactly would I report? I had no proof anything menacing was happening, just footage of someone standing outside my home. Yet I could not shake the sinister energy this figure exuded. Exhausted and wired on anxiety, I decided I had to confront them in person the next time they appeared. So the following night, I sat awake watching the live feed, baseball bat in hand. Right on schedule at 3 a.m., the phantom visitor returned. Heart thudding, I approached my front door. I unlocked the deadbolt as quietly as possible, then took a deep breath and ripped open the door, bat raised high. No one was there. I dashed down the steps into the night, bare feet on cold concrete as I swung the bat wildly at the empty air. After scouring every corner of the yard, I was once again confronted with the fact that whoever was terrorizing me had vanished as usual. Defeated, I slunk back inside, not knowing what to do next. This sinister game of cat and mouse would surely drive me mad soon. That's when the true nightmare began. I awoke to furious pounding on my front door and the doorbell screaming over and over again. I scrambled to check the camera footage, hands shaking. There was the hooded figure violently throwing their body against my door, stabbing at the bell incessantly. In a panic now, I called the police and desperately reported an intruder attempting to break in. The operator said a car was on its way and to stay on the line. Within minutes, blue and red lights flashed outside. 2 police officers arrived. When I opened the door, they were cautiously approaching with hands on their holsters, searching the surroundings. No one was there. The officers searched around and questioned me. I showed them the footage of the angry visitor pounding at my door just minutes earlier. They scrutinized the video closely, looking disturbed. That's when one of the officers noticed something that turned my blood cold. Strange symbols etched into the door that I somehow hadn't spotted before. They also pointed at a few small drops of what looked like blood on the door handle. I suddenly felt dizzy. This was no prankster teenager. Something deeply sinister was targeting me. The next day, I urgently contacted a security expert to inspect the camera and home. After reviewing the footage numerous times, they discovered something chilling. The video had been expertly hacked and manipulated. The pounding intruder I thought I saw was digitally inserted. No one had actually been at my door the night the police came. In fact, upon closer forensic analysis, none of the footage contained a real person. It was all doctored. An elaborate ruse to terrorize me, the expert confirmed. I sat there in shock at this revelation. It all felt so real. Later that day, I booked an emergency trip to get away for a while and clear my head after this trauma. But that final night, as I packed my bags, the doorbell camera app alerted me again. Hands quaking, I checked the live feed. There, on my doorstep, stood the hooded visitor one last time. They slowly raised their hands into view, holding up a sign that turned my blood to ice. "I'm just getting started." I've always hated spiders. Just the sight of those creepy, crawly legs makes me freak out. I guess that's why what happened to me not too long ago was so terrifying. It started off like any normal night. I'm Jess, by the way. I just turned 13. I was up late texting friends and watching YouTube in bed. Around midnight, I started feeling tired, so I curled up to go to sleep. I always sleep with some sort of light on. I know people say you're supposed to sleep in the dark, but I get scared of what I can't see. The dim light from my lamp lets me make out the basic shapes of my dresser, desk, and closet doors. But the corners of my room were draped in shadows. As I drifted off, I felt something tickle my leg. I assumed it was just my cat Moose snuggling up to me like he does every night. But when I glanced down, I saw something that made my heart stop. There was a giant black spider crawling up my pajama leg. I let out a scream and frantically swiped it off me. It went flying and disappeared onto the floor. Moose went darting under the bed. My heart was racing, but I took a deep breath. It was just one spider. No big deal. I probably left my window open and it got in that way. I settled back under the covers, pulling them extra tight around me to hopefully not let anything else in there. Moose eventually came back out and curled up at my feet. I was just starting to relax again when I felt it. That same faint tickle on my ankle. I slowly peered under the blanket and almost passed out. There were 2 more huge spiders underneath. I leaped out of bed screaming. That's when things went from bad to seriously worse. As I stood there hyperventilating, I watched in horror as dozens of black spiders began streaming out from my pillows. It was like a scene from a nightmare. There were spiders pouring out from inside my actual pillows. I was screaming and crying as I brushed spiders off me. I tore the pillowcases off and spiders kept coming out. More and more. There had to have been hundreds, all crawling over my bed and scattering across the floor. I was completely panicked, stomping on them while sobbing. Moose growled and pounced at the spiders from under the bed. The squishing sounds as I smashed the spiders barefoot made me gag, but I couldn't stop. My legs were covered in spider bites that stung badly, but I was too freaked out to care. I had to get away from these spiders. I ran from my room screaming for my parents down the hall. They came rushing out and I shrieked about the spiders everywhere. But when my dad went back into my room and turned on the light, there weren't any spiders. No spider bodies smashed on the floor. No spiders crawling anywhere. My pillows looked totally normal. My dad checked under the bed and in the closets, nothing. He looked at me like I was crazy. Mom just hugged me and said it was probably just a nightmare. But I knew what I saw. I begged them to call an exterminator, but they insisted it wasn't necessary. They let me sleep in their room that night, but the next night they made me sleep in my own bed again. I reluctantly got under the covers, inspecting everything closely before lying down. Moose curled up next to me like normal. I left the light on like always. My eyes stayed wide open, staring around the room. I must have imagined the spiders last night. My dad was right, it had to be a nightmare. A seriously messed up nightmare. As I finally felt my eyes getting heavy, I glanced down one more time just to be sure. And I saw it. A giant hairy spider was crawling up Moose's back leg, heading straight for me. This was no nightmare. The spiders were real. I fled that house so fast and refused to go back to my room. We stayed in a hotel while my parents arranged for an exterminator to come. I begged them to let me change rooms, but they insisted it was all in my head. Maybe they were right. The exterminator didn't find any spiders or egg sacs, nothing to explain an infestation that I thought I clearly saw. But when I open my eyes at night, I still see them. Spiders pouring out of my pillows endlessly. That's why I sleep with Moose in the guest room now, with all the lights on. I know everyone thinks I imagined the attack, but I know what crawled all over me that night. And there's no way I'm sleeping in my bedroom again until I'm 100% sure they're gone. If I ever feel that faint tickle on my skin again, I'm leaving home for good. My family can think I'm crazy all they want, but I know what I felt, and those spiders know exactly where I sleep.